The film opens with two Mormon missionaries, Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton, sitting and discussing the size difference between regular condoms and Magnum condoms, to which Paxton says there is no difference in size. She questions what else they believe just because they were told. Paxton says she watched a pornography video in which the actress in it was moaning loudly, and someone off camera screamed, "We can hear you." And Paxton says the look of embarrassment on the actress's face made her feel bad. Paxton is nervous since she hasn't converted a single person, and Barnes says she only converted 9 people. Amazing Paxton. They go around town trying to talk to others for conversion, but unfortunately, they didn't get much attention. On the street, they spot some teenage girls who play a mean prank on Paxton by pulling down her skirt to see if she has magic underwear. They later go to a remote house as they have a schedule for conversion with the homeowner. Paxton also talks to Barnes about how people mock their religion, but Barnes doesn't seem too bothered by it and tells Paxton that she is awesome. They lock their bicycles to the banister and walk toward the house as it starts to rain heavily. They knock on the front door, and after a few seconds, an Englishman named Mr. Reed opens it for them. They start to discuss their business with him right away, but he invites them inside as it is raining outside. They only agree when he says that his wife is in the house, as another woman must be present for them to enter. Reed tells them that his wife is baking a blueberry pie and asks to take their coat to dry it for them. He tells them that the walls and ceilings in the house have metal in them, as metal prevents any cell phone network from working. He goes to the other room to dry their coats, leaving the girls alone in the house. After a few seconds, Reed returns bringing a cup of Coca-Cola for them. He tells them that his wife is being shy, but assures them she will join their meeting. Reed sits the girls down and asks them where they are from and if they were raised in the church. Barnes says her mother was a convert, and after her father died, she and her mother auditioned at different churches to find their faith. Reed relates and says he knows that feeling to find faith in a doctrine they believe in. Paxton tries to continue the conversation by talking about Joseph Smith and how he investigated many denominations and he finds none of them quite fit, which is why Joseph founded their church. Reed tells them a story about Joseph, as he has done his own study on Mormonism and owns a copy of the Book of Mormon by Joseph Smith. Reed then returns and asks Barnes how her father died, to which he says it is from blueberry disease. Reed says the blueberry disease is wonderful, making Barnes uncomfortable. Paxton intervenes and corrects it and tells him that it is Lou Gehrig's disease, to which Reed apologizes and says he thought she was making a joke about the blueberry pie. Reed then sees a mark on Barnes' arm and continues to apologize to her about the blueberry mix-up. Paxton tries to change the atmosphere by saying when she dies she wants to be reincarnated as a butterfly so that she can find the people she loves once again. Then suddenly the power of the house goes out, but Reed assures them that it is normal. He then requests to ask them an awkward question but gets too shy to ask them. When they push him to ask them, he asks about the concept of polygamy or the concept of one man having multiple wives. He says that they are discussing a church that decided a controversial practice was a stain on its reputation and an actual hindrance to recruiting new members, and so it used revelation to banish a provocative religious pillar that seemed unsavory in contemporary times. Barnes tries to explain that polygamy was a spiritual mission needed at the time in order to grow the ranks of their membership in the wake of much hardship and bloodshed. She tells him that a man having multiple wives was purely meant to help the community grow. Barnes tells him the reason it was removed from the church was not because it was controversial, but just because it wasn't necessary anymore. Reed then says that he worries that Joseph Smith used the concept of polygamy to legitimize his affairs with other women, and later he used the concept of revelation to deal with the consequence of his action. He asks them that if revelation by God is filtered through man and man is flawed and lies, how do they know any of it's true? Paxton tells him they know because of how it makes them feel, and Reed tells her that she is right. Reed then asks them what their favorite fast food is, and Paxton lists her favorite fast food restaurants, and when Reed tries to add Taco Bell, they specifically tell him they do not discuss Taco Bell. Reed says as he studied different kinds of religion, he started to realize that none of them were true, and that finding out the one true religion was the last thing he wanted to do, but says he unfortunately found the one true religion. Barnes then asks him if they can meet his wife, and Reed says he will tell her and sets a timer on the wall which turns the lights back on in the house before he leaves the room. Paxton and Barnes start to get nervous and try to come up with a plan to leave. Barnes then looks down at the candle that Reed placed on the table, and she slowly turns it around to find that it is the source of the blueberry pie smell and is not coming from the other room. Reed then suddenly comes back and tells them that his wife is finally ready and is eager to meet them and invites them to the other room. Before they follow him, Barnes fakes a phone call and tells him that they will catch up to him as soon as they are done. Barnes and Paxton get uncomfortable and try to find a quiet way to leave the house as they deduce that there is no Mrs. Reed. As they reach the front door, Barnes suddenly stops and says their bikes are locked and that the keys to the locks are inside their coat which Reed took. They finally decided they could walk and tries to leave, but unfortunately, the front door ended up locked, and they have no signal to call for help. They start to make their way toward the back of the house, only to find Reed in his study, which contains an extensive library. They tell him that they got off the phone and that they have been called back to the church, so they must leave. He tells them that they are just getting started, but says he won't keep them if they have to leave and gives them their coats. Barnes checks her pocket but doesn't find the key. Instead, it is swapped into Paxton's pocket. Barnes and Paxton ask him to open the front door for them as it is locked, but Reed tells them that he can't unlock it as the door opens with a timer and it will not open till the morning. He tells them that if they are in a hurry to leave, they can take the back door. Reed says they don't need to make up lies to get out of something. As they say, they got a call from the church, but he has told them earlier that the house wall and ceiling have metal in it, which blocks any cell phone signal. Barnes asks him the way to the back door, as there are 2 doors, and Reed asks them if they have a preference. Paxton politely asks if they can see his wife for a second, as they cannot be in a man's house who doesn't have a wife or a girlfriend. Reed tells them he will call his wife, and before he leaves the room he asks them if they still believe his wife is in the next door despite all the pieces of evidence to the contrary. He asks them if they believe in God just because somebody told them that God is real despite them seeing evidence to the contrary, like Barnes' father's illness, and asks her if she thinks it was God's plan to ruin his life, or if she did believe something that she knows is not true just to get comfort because she was afraid of what it might mean if it was all a lie. He tells them that he put the scented candle on the table because he wanted them to think the things they believe just because somebody asked them to believe. Barnes says they are leaving and opens one of the doors, and is shocked to find that it is not a back door, but a basement. Back at the church, Elder Kennedy of the Mormon Church has noticed that Barnes and Paxton never sign themselves back in, so he goes out to the houses that they would have visited to ask around for them. Back at the house, the girls try to politely excuse themselves, but Reed tells them that they should have preference about the doors and must choose carefully the right one. Paxton then sees a letter opener on the floor. Reed then appears to pull out something sinister, only for it to be an original version of the Monopoly board game. He then begins a lecture to the missionaries about how it derived from a previous board game called the Landlord's Game. He similarizes Judaism with the original edition of Monopoly, Christianity with the most popular, and Islam, the newer second most popular edition. He requests their Mormon book and similarizes it with a spin-off edition. Reed also applies this to the song The Air That I Breathe by the Hollies, which Barnes and Paxton have claimed to not have heard before that night. But he knows that they are familiar with the song Creep by Radiohead, since that song used elements from the former song. Reed then turns off the light and shows them that the holy texts they revere are just mythological iterations of stories that ancient people have been telling each other for centuries. He explains that they are not true or real in any sense, but are merely a conduit to a more ancient truth. He tells them that the story of Jesus Christ is a famous story that has been told for thousands of years before Jesus was born. He gives them examples of different supposed gods who have similar stories, like Krishna, who was born to a virgin, baptized in a river, and rose from the dead. This is all to establish Reed's belief that all the world's religions are flawed and derived from the one true religion. He tells them that all 10,000 verifiable religions, including Christianity, are false, and throws their Mormon book to the ground. As Barnes picks it up, she sees the letter opener. Reed tells them there are 2 doors through which they can exit, marking one with belief and the other with disbelief. He gives the missionaries another chance to go through the doors, based on their actual beliefs in God. Barnes argues against Reed's claims that all of the supposed gods he has mentioned are nothing alike Jesus Christ, and points out that one of them even has a bird head. She chooses the belief door despite Paxton telling her that they should choose the disbelief door to agree with Reed so they can get out. Barnes and Paxton finally go through the belief door. The door leads Barnes and Paxton down into an underground dungeon with no way out. Barnes reveals that she has taken the letter opener from the other room and gives it to Paxton. She tells her to stab Reed hard in the neck when Barnes uses the word magic underwear. Reed then talks to the ladies through a speaker as a decrepit old woman, referred to as a prophet, walks in holding a messy blueberry pie. The prophet appears to be praying for a few seconds before she gets up and starts eating the blueberry pie. After a few seconds, the woman suddenly freezes and collapses. Reed informs Barnes and Paxton that they are about to witness a miracle. He says that the pie has been poisoned, and that the woman will be resurrected moments later. Then suddenly, Reed hears his front door ring, as do the girls through the speaker. He opens it to find Kennedy there. Barnes and Paxton try to get his attention by screaming through the door opening, but Kennedy can't hear them. Barnes then sees a fallen match on the ground from the other room. She uses the rug in the other room to pull the match closer to them and tries to start a fire, but Kennedy leaves before they can do anything. Not long after, the ladies notice that the prophet has seemingly been resurrected, as she begins muttering a description of the afterlife, saying that it is not real. Reed comes down to the dungeon to boast about the miracle, and that he is offering to sacrifice one of them and bring them back so that they can see the one true religion, but Barnes says she knows that this was no miracle. She tells Reed why she and Paxton don't talk about Taco Bell, which is because Barnes was clinically dead after an E. coli infection, and her near-death experience was similar to what the prophet was describing. Barnes then says magic underwear, giving Paxton a sign to stab Reed in the neck. Before Paxton can stab him, Reed slashes Barnes' throat, claiming that she will come back. After a few minutes, Reed determines that Barnes cannot be brought back. He cuts into her arm and finds a metal pin inside, claiming it to be a microchip and that Sister Barnes was supposedly never real, nor is any of Paxton's reality. Paxton then tells Reed she knows that the metal item was a contraceptive device, and she knows what he really did. The first prophet really did die, but the resurrected one was another woman who was given a script by Reed to describe the afterlife. What Reed did not count on was the woman telling the ladies that it's not real. The second woman switched the dead one with herself while the girls tried to get Kennedy's attention. She tells him that something happened that he didn't expect and that he gave her a script and the woman went off the book. And now he is trying to recover. Paxton then moves away the table to find a secret trapdoor. Paxton then goes down the trapdoor where the dead woman would be, which Reed lets her enter so that Paxton can see the one true religion. She goes down to find the dead body of the first woman, proving her theory right. She then finds another door inside and opens it to find many religious artifacts and comes across another red door with a satanic symbol on it. She goes inside to find multiple witchcraft and satanic artifacts. She finally comes across the final door, which is locked with hers in Barnes' bicycle's locker. Paxton uses the key that was in her coat and opens it to find many other women in cages. Reed comes into the room and meets her. Paxton finally figures it out and says that when they first arrived, he left them in the living room. They thought he went to call his wife, but he took the key from Barnes' coat, went outside to unlock their bikes, and hid them. She has noticed his hair was wet when he came back with the drinks. He did this because he didn't want the elder to find their bikes. Then he returned the bike key to the wrong coat pocket. They thought he made a mistake, but she has now realized that he did that because he wants her to use the key to open the final door. And the reason she is still alive is because she is exactly where he wants her to be. Paxton comes to the conclusion that, in Reed's mind, the one true religion is control, especially since he tried to make them kill themselves and believe it was their idea. As Reed tries to taunt Paxton, she stabs him in the throat with the letter opener that Barnes gave her for protection. She runs for an exit but doesn't make it far before Reed stabs her in the gut with the letter opener. As they start to bleed out, Reed asks Paxton to say a prayer for them. Paxton says praying doesn't really do anything and is more of just an act of kindness. She starts to pray, while Reed crawls over to try and finish her, but he gets whacked in the head with a plank of wood with nails sticking out, killing him. The blow was dealt by Sister Barnes, who lives long enough before collapsing into Paxton's arms and dies. Paxton grieves over her best friend's death. Paxton finally manages to find a window to escape from as it is now morning and the storm has cleared up. She sees a butterfly land on her hand, as she had earlier stated that she would like to come back as one when she dies. Paxton looks away for a second, and the butterfly disappears.